Welcome to International Management, the podcast that breaks down the core challenges and strategies of global business. Based on Orlando Casabon's scripts for his international management class, each episode offers practical insights, clear strategies, real-world examples, and expert guidance to help you navigate complex global landscapes. For additional resources, visit casabon.com. Now, let's dive into the essentials of international management.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Ready to hop on our virtual jetpacks?
Let's do it. Where are we headed?
Today we're taking a whirlwind tour of global marketplaces and business centers. Really seeing what makes them tick.
The forces that shape them, the history behind them, the whole shebang.
You got it. And maybe even a little geopolitics thrown in for good measure.
I'm in. Let's dive in.
Okay, so rewind the clock back to, say, 1970. You've got North America, the European Union, and Japan, owning the stage.
The economic rock stars of the world. Right.
Totally. They held a massive 54% of the global GDP.
A real power trio. But times change, don't they?
Fast forward to 1970, and things look a lot different.
It's like watching a time-lapse video, buildings going up, some shrinking, the whole landscape transforming.
Exactly. By 1970, China enters the scene.
Makes a grand entrance, you could say.
They grabbed a whopping 15% of global GDP. Meanwhile, the U.S.,
still a major player, of course.
But yeah, their share shrunk a bit.
It's inevitable, I suppose, in a world that's becoming more and more economically diverse.
So this power shift, what does it mean for North America? Are we still holding our own?
North America, especially with the U.S. leading the charge, is still a force to be reckoned with.
Like the veteran player everyone respects.
Right. And the U.S. dollar still calls a lot of the shots in international transactions, That says a lot about their influence.
True, but their share of global GDP, it's definitely getting smaller.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, though. It just reflects a more balanced playing field, I think.
More players stepping up their game.
Precisely. More like a sports league where, the U.S. might have dominated for a while, but now you've got these new contenders coming in, making things a lot more dynamic.
Love that analogy. Okay, so what about the other key players in North America? Canada, Mexico, how are they doing?
Canada, with all their natural resources, they're like that steady, dependable teammate.
Always delivering the goods.
Exactly. And their economy, it's deeply connected to the U.S., especially since the USMCA trade agreement.
Well, they've got their own internal stuff going on too, right? Quebec and all that.
Yeah, Quebec always adds a bit of a twist to their economic strategy. It keeps things interesting.
And Mexico. They've kind of quietly become a manufacturing powerhouse.
Quietly, but effectively, for sure. Mexico, sitting right between North and Latin America, they're strategically vital to the global supply chain.
Like a bridge connecting two continents.
Exactly. They've become a manufacturing hub for all sorts of industries, and their economy is really closely tied to both the U.S. and Canada. A real team effort down there.
So, North America, they're definitely adapting to this multipolar world. But let's hop across the Atlantic for a sec and see how Western Europe's doing. They've created this, economic supergroup with the EU, right?
The EU is definitely a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. Western Europe, with powerhouses like Germany and France leading the way.
They've got it going on.
They really do. Common currency with the euro, open borders, and a strong commitment to free trade. It's quite impressive what they've achieved. But just like any band, they have their internal disagreements,
What do you mean, creative differences?
Something like that. Think about it. You've got Germany, a manufacturing and export champion totally focused on open markets and global trade.
Makes sense.
Then there's France, who, while they're all for a united Europe, they sometimes lean towards protecting their own industries.
A little bit of a tug of war there, huh?
You could say that. This tension between wanting free trade and also wanting to protect national interests makes the EU a really interesting case study.
Trying to make different melodies harmonize, not always an easy feat.
You got it. And then to add another layer of complexity, there are the newer EU members.
The ones who joined more recently.
Exactly. Many of them are still adjusting to a market-based economy, which is no small feat. Imagine having to restructure entire industries, create whole new legal frameworks for businesses. It's a long road.
It sounds like they're juggling a lot, trying to keep everyone on the same page while also keeping up with the global economic currents.
It's a constant balancing act, that's for sure.
Okay, so we've seen North America, we've seen Western Europe. Now let's shift our focus eastward to Eastern Europe and Central Asia. What's the economic story unfolding there?
This region, with Russia at the helm, is in the midst of a massive transformation, going from planned economies to something more market-driven.
Quite a shift.
It really is. It's like they're shedding an old skin and growing a new one.
And Russia's journey from a communist economy to a market-based one, that hasn't exactly been smooth sailing.
Not at all. Remember the 90s with Boris Yeltsin and all those privatization attempts?
Things were pretty chaotic back then.
They were. That's when those powerful oligarchs emerged, and
Yeah.
the economy was really unstable. Then Putin came in, and you had that period of rapid growth fueled by oil and gas.
But things have gotten a bit tougher for them lately, haven't they?
Definitely. They've been hit hard by a perfect storm of falling oil prices, those international sanctions, and now the conflict in Ukraine.
A lot to grapple with. So, Russia's facing some headwinds, but what about the other countries in this region? The Central Asian republics, for instance.
5 Central Asian republics, they're all kind of figuring out their own paths in this post-Soviet world.
Each one with their own vibe.
Exactly. Different cultures, varying income levels, and they're each trying to find their place in the global economy. They have a lot of potential, especially with all those natural resources, but political instability and infrastructure gaps are holding some of them back.
Sounds like a region with a lot of untapped potential, but also a fair share of risks.
Definitely a mixed bag. But now let's turn our attention to a region that's often called the engine of global growth, Asia.
Asia. It's hard to talk about the global economy without mentioning the Asian giants, right?
It's impossible. Asia's economic landscape is unbelievably dynamic. You've got giants like China and India growing at an incredible pace, and then there are those Asian tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong, each with their own unique economic success story.
It's like they cracked the code to economic growth.
They've definitely been strategic, but let's focus on China for a moment. Their rise to economic dominance has been quite remarkable.
It really has. How did they manage to transform their economy so drastically in such a short period?
It's been a carefully orchestrated blend of state-led development and market reforms. They've attracted massive foreign investment and turned themselves into a manufacturing powerhouse. Their growth has been phenomenal.
But I've been reading about some concerns, slowing growth, rising debt, and an over-reliance on exports. Are those legitimate worries?
They are valid concerns. China's at a crossroads, and they know it. They're trying to shift to a more sustainable growth model, one that's less reliant on exports and investment and more focused on domestic consumption and innovation. It's a delicate balancing act.
So China's economic story is far from over, and it's definitely one the whole world's watching closely. What about Japan and India? How are they holding up in this new economic landscape?
Japan, remember, they were an economic powerhouse for decades, but they've faced some challenges in recent years. Their population is aging, their workforce is shrinking, and they've had to adapt to the rise of new economic powerhouses like China and South Korea.
So they're having to reinvent themselves in a way.
Exactly. But they're still a major player, known for their technological prowess and their manufacturing base. They're resilient, that's for sure.
And India. They seem to be generating a lot of buzz, particularly in the tech world.
India's like that sleeping giant that's finally starting to wake up. Huge young population, a growing middle class, and that vibrant tech sector that's attracting global attention. They have the potential to become a major force in the global economy.
So, lots of potential, but probably some challenges too.
Of course. Poverty, inequality, and infrastructure gaps are still major hurdles, but they're definitely a country to watch in the coming decades.
It seems like Asia as a whole is just brimming with contrasts. Dynamism and stagnation, opportunity and challenge all coexisting. It's fascinating, really. But for now, let's shift gears and head to a continent that often gets painted with a single brushstroke, Africa.
Ah, Africa. So much potential, but often misunderstood, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It feels like every time I read a news article about Africa, it's all about the incredible potential for growth. Is that just hype, or is there something real there?
Oh, the hype is real. Africa has the youngest population on the planet, and their middle class is expanding rapidly.
So a lot of new consumers and a workforce that's eager to work.
You got it. And then you add in their vast natural resources, from minerals to land, and yeah, you have a recipe for some serious economic growth.
So what's holding them back then? Why isn't Africa already an economic powerhouse?
There are definitely challenges, and one of the biggest is infrastructure. Many African countries lack the roads, the railways, the ports needed to get goods and people moving efficiently.
So basic infrastructure is crucial to unlocking their economic potential.
Absolutely. It adds to the cost of doing business and it limits growth. But the good news is that many African governments are prioritizing infrastructure development. We're seeing a lot of investment in roads, railways, and energy projects.
That's encouraging. But what about things like political instability and corruption? Those seem like pretty big roadblocks for businesses.
You're right, those are serious issues. But remember, Africa is not a single entity. You've got 54 countries, each with its own political and economic landscape. Some have made great strides in improving governance and tackling corruption, while others are still struggling.
So it's a matter of picking and choosing carefully, doing your due diligence before jumping in.
Exactly. There are risks, for sure, but the rewards can be substantial. Africa is a continent on the verge of a major economic transformation, and those who take a long-term view and understand the complexities stand to benefit greatly.
It's about seeing the nuances, not just the headlines. Now let's switch gears again and head over to the Middle East. It seems like we mostly hear about this region in the context of political conflicts or oil. But what about its economic potential beyond oil?
The Middle East is going through a really interesting economic transition right now. They're trying to diversify away from oil dependence and create more sustainable economies for the future. Tourism is booming in some areas, tech is growing rapidly, and renewable energy is a major focus.
I've heard a lot about Dubai and Abu Dhabi becoming these global business hubs. Is that hype, or is there something to it?
It's more than hype. Those cities have invested heavily in infrastructure, creating world-class airports, seaports, and business districts. They've also put policies in place to attract foreign investment and diversify their economies.
But what about the elephant in the room? The Middle East is known for its geopolitical risks. How can businesses navigate that?
There's no denying the geopolitical risks. The conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere, they create a lot of instability. But there are pockets of stability too, and many countries in the region are committed to economic growth and development.
So it's a balancing act, weighing the risks and opportunities carefully.
Exactly. It's a complex region that demands a deep understanding of the political, economic, and cultural dynamics at play.
All right, last up on our whirlwind tour, South America. I have to admit, I don't know a whole lot about the economic landscape there. What are some of the key things we should be aware of?
South America is a region of incredible diversity. On one hand, you have Chile, with its stable economy and strong institutions, and then you have Venezuela, which has been battling a severe economic crisis for years. It's a study in contrasts.
What accounts for such a stark difference?
One factor is the quality of governance. Countries with transparent legal systems, strong institutions, and low levels of corruption tend to have better economic outcomes. Economic diversification is also key. Countries that rely too heavily on a single commodity, like oil, are vulnerable to price fluctuations.
So good governance and a diverse economy, two key ingredients for success.
You got it. And we can't forget regional integration. South American countries are working together more and more, strengthening economic ties through trade agreements and infrastructure projects.
It's amazing to see how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, but it's a great starting point.
It's given us a taste of the incredible diversity and complexity of the global economic landscape. And speaking of strategic moves, the story of Japan's Ministry of International Trade and Industry, or MIT, is really fascinating.
MIT?
Yeah, their influence on Japan's recovery after World War II is really remarkable.
MIT was a major driving force. They didn't just plan for Japan's economic future, they actively guided industries.
Wow.
They invested heavily in R&D and even cultivated these really powerful partnerships with these corporate networks called keiretsu.
Keiretsu, those are those super interconnected Japanese companies, right?
Exactly. Imagine this network of companies spanning across different industries, all linked by shared ownership and collaborative decision-making. And at the heart of it all is a central bank, acting as this financial linchpin. This level of interconnection created a unique ecosystem for growth.
Makes you wonder, though, is such tight collaboration always a good thing? Could it potentially stifle competition and innovation over time?
That's a great question to consider. But while we're thinking about that, let's shift our focus to another Asian success story. The four Asian tigers, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Their rise to economic powerhouses is a story worth looking at.
It really is. What were the key factors that fueled their economic transformation? Was it simply a matter of being in the right place at the right time?
Well, while geography played a role for sure, especially being near those rapidly developing markets like China, their success was more than just luck.
Right.
These nations shared a commitment to open markets, strategic investment in education and technology, and some really effective economic policies.
It seems like there's this recurring theme: education, technology, smart strategies. Now let's switch gears and look at South Korea in particular is known for its unique economic landscape, dominated by these things called chaebols, massive family-controlled conglomerates that are involved in just about every sector.
Chaebols are a fascinating example of how concentrated economic power can be used for rapid growth. Think Samsung, Hyundai, LG, these global giants came out of the chaebol system, and they've helped put South Korea on the world stage.
Their impact is huge, but is there a downside to having these dominant players in an economy? Could they maybe slow down the growth of smaller businesses or stifle competition?
That's a valid question. While chaebols have been key in driving innovation and economic advancement in South Korea, there are concerns about transparency, fair competition, and the potential for these huge companies to squeeze out smaller players.
Interesting.
It highlights the tough decisions that countries have to make when they're trying to develop their economies.
It's all about finding the right balance, right? Now let's switch gears and look at South America's journey. They've had their own share of ups and downs, especially with those controversial import substitution policies.
Import substitution was a strategy aimed at protecting domestic industries by limiting imports and encouraging local production.
Makes sense in theory, but what happened in reality?
At first, it did stimulate growth in domestic industries in places like Brazil and Argentina, but over time, there were unintended consequences.
Like what?
Things like rising inflation, less efficiency, and a lack of competition, things that ended up hurting their progress.
So how did they deal with these problems? Did they swing back to completely free markets?
It wasn't a complete 180, but there was a move towards market liberalization in the late 20th century.
Okay.
This involved reducing trade barriers, privatizing state-owned businesses, and taking a more market-oriented approach.
Did that course correction work?
In many cases, it did help with economic growth and stability, but it's important to remember that each country's situation was different. There's no magic solution when it comes to economic policy.
It's a constant balancing act between different approaches. And this leads to a fundamental question. What's the right balance between government intervention and free market principles? Is it always a tug of war?
That's a question that has sparked so many debates in economic theories.
For sure. And I'm sure you have some insights into this debate.
Well, let's use some real-world examples. Japan's MITI, with its hands-on approach, played a big role in their economic miracle. Then you have the 4 Asian tigers, who embraced open markets and were incredibly successful.
And then there's the U.S., with its focus on free enterprise and innovation, which has seen its own successes and challenges.
And let's not forget about Germany, with its social market economy, this blend of free markets and a strong social safety net. We've also seen both the good and the bad of interventionism and liberalization in South America.
Well, I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground today. From the rise of emerging markets to the challenges facing traditional powerhouses, from the opportunities in Africa to the complexities of the Middle East, we've really explored the shifting dynamics of global marketplaces and business centers.
It's been quite the journey. I hope our listeners have found it insightful and thought-provoking.
Me too. And more than anything, I hope it sparked a desire to learn more, to keep exploring this fascinating and ever-changing global landscape.
Because the more we learn, the better equipped we are to not just understand the world, but to shape it.
So to our listeners, keep diving deep, stay curious, and never stop learning.
Because in a world that's constantly evolving, the most valuable asset you can have is knowledge.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap things up for today. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world around you.